of tragedies in Nice, France, so I just wanted to take a brief moment of silence for that one, if you will. Thank you. So we're being recorded for local cable TV. Our district, the 47th district, is kind of a peculiar district, but I know it covers McFarland, a good deal of Fitchburg, Monona, the town of Dunn, parts of Madison, parts of Cottage Grove. And we have three candidates who are running for the seat that is being vacated by our current representative, Rob Call, who's not running for re-election. The primary is on August 9th. The way we want to organize this, I'm going to have each of our three candidates make up to a 5-minute opening presentation. Then, along with my active McFarland colleagues, we developed 3 questions that have already been sent to the candidates. They're each going to respond up to 2 minutes, and then we're going to turn it over to you for questions, which I would appreciate if you would ask them generically, so that they all have a chance to respond, and then they're each going to make a 2-minute closing statement. So we're going to just go from your left to right. We have Jimmy Anderson, Julia Arata Frata, and Tony Hartman, and we're going to start with Jimmy.
First, I would like to thank Active McFarland and United Fitchburg for holding the event, and I would like to thank all of you for attending. As many of you know, this is my first time running for office. To be honest, I never imagined doing anything like this. But then again, I did imagine my life would turn out this way in a lot of different ways. I guess my first surprise was moving to Wisconsin. Growing up in California, what I remembered about the state was that there was a lot of cows, there was a lot of cheese, and that you all loved Brett Favre. I'm not so sure the last part's true anymore, but after my wife Ashley and I finished undergrad, we were going to go to graduate school, and the University of Wisconsin here at Madison offered us a really great opportunity. And my wife's program offered to fly her out, and so she got to come visit the city. And she fell in love. And it wasn't just the cheese curds or the spotted cow. It was the people. And I remember she called me one evening, and she said she had just finished a night of polka dancing at the Essen House, and she felt like she was home. And, I'm so glad that she fell in love with this place. And because if it wasn't for your incredible support and your kindness, I wouldn't have made it through the other real big twist in my life. It was between my second and third years of law school that I lost my mom, dad, and little brother and was paralyzed by a drunk driver. I was visiting home in California. It was 2 days before my birthday. And it was because of so many people in this community that reached out to help Ashley and me, whether it was bringing us meals or watching our pets or just spending a bit of time with me in the hospital. It was this community's incredible compassion that really got us through what was the darkest point in our lives. But it was also that incident that really sparked my political awakening. It was after my spine was fused and I was flown back here to Wisconsin that my insurance company said that you're too expensive, you're about to reach your lifetime maximums, and we're going to kick you off. And my wife and our students, we didn't know what we were going to do, how we were going to pay for the months of rehabilitation. We were essentially facing financial ruin, and all because a drunk driver decided to go out driving that night. But it was a few days later that we received another letter that said that the provisions of the Affordable Care Act have kicked in that got rid of those lifetime maximums and stopped them from kicking me off my health insurance plan. And I realized that it takes hard work, and it takes committed public servants to make good policy. It makes me think of public servants like Russ Feingold, who lost his seat because he voted for the Affordable Care Act. And he didn't vote for it because it was politically expedient. He did it because it was an act of courage. And like all of you, I know that I'm going to be fighting like hell to make sure that he's going to be our senator once again. So it was after I got out of the hospital and I went back and I graduated from law school. I started a nonprofit to help the victims of drunk driving. And I know that my family would have wanted me to take that tragedy and make some good out of it. But it was after the nonprofit was up and running that I started thinking about everything that this community did for me, for helping me get back on my feet, or I guess get back on my wheels is a better way to put it. But I felt like I owed just an incredible debt, and so I wanted to run for office as a way to get back. You know, I'm not running for this seat because I'm looking to climb another rung of the political ladder, and I'm not doing this because it's some kind of fun pet project. I'm here because I want to represent you. I want to represent your hopes and your dreams and your aspirations. As many people in this room can attest to, there is one important question I ask at every door that I go to, and it's really the only question that matters. What are the issues that matter to you? I ask not only because I really want to know, I ask because that's what it means to be a representative. It's about carrying your values to the Capitol and fighting for them every day. And so I'm asking for your support on August 9th, and I promise if you sit with me, I will always stand up for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Julia Aratafrata.
Good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. My name is Julia Ratafrata. I am originally from Argentina. This is why I have this accent, because I came to this country like 23 years ago, to this part of the world, and I didn't know any English. So they told me that, you know, it's going to be stuck with me for the rest of my life. So, you know, as I mentioned, I came 23 years ago to this part of the world with my husband to pursue grad study, and the idea was to come back to Argentina. But then, after we finished with our study, we decided that it was a place where we can call home, you know, United States. And then we decided to study and raise our family here. I am currently, I am an accountant. I work for a CPA firm. I have a bachelor degree in business administration and accounting, and also a master in business administration. And I have been working as an accountant for the firm Wagner CPA for the last almost 12 years, since I moved here to Fitchburg. We moved here 12 years ago with my husband from the South because for two reasons. One, it was the UW. My husband is a professor at the university. And the other thing, because at that moment we have two small children, and everyone would say it's a great place to go, with Madison, Wisconsin, good public school. So when we have the opportunity to decide which university or which offer to take, everyone would say, oh, great, Madison, Wisconsin. We came here for a visit, and we fell in love with the city, with the state. We saw all these people that are so proud of the state. This is the biggest reason that we came here. It was a good public school system for our kid and a great university for my husband to pursue his career as a researcher. And then I got involved because I am a person that I cannot, people that they know me, they know that I cannot be quiet. I have to do things all the time. So I get involved with the Latino community here in Dane County. For the last 10 years, I have been very active working with the Latino business community. I was president of the Latino Chamber of Commerce. And then when I got elected as an alder for the city of Fitchburg last year, I decided to work for my city and relinquish that position. But through my work with the Latino community, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people and from all the background. And also I had the opportunity to make alliances and partnership with a lot of other nonprofits, business leaders in the community, and government. But because I am this, my motto has always been to be an agent of change and transform the community where I live. I decided last year that it was time for me to move on to the next level. And I love my city, Fitchburg, so much. And I say, okay, what can I do in this city? So, and since I was part of the economic development for a year, and I had the opportunity to see how the city works and the roles, and I decided, okay, it would be a good idea to run for ALDE. This is what I did, and I won, and I am very proud to be an ALDE for the city of Fitchburg and my involvement with the community. But also, in the last year, I have been very frustrated what is going on under Governor Scott Walker administration and leadership, especially with the UW funding, because it's affecting my family, I can see many of our friends, good friends, leaving the state to pursue their career in other universities. And also, I am very concerned about the public funding for K to 12 education, for vouchers, how they are, vouchers are draining our public funding from public school to the money that move to the private sector, following the children to private school. So, and also what is happening with women's rights. I am very concerned all the policies that are affecting and hurting women. So this is what are the reason, and also the reason is because in February, when I had the opportunity to march with the Latino community for justice, social justice, I had the opportunity to be introduced to the assembly, and then I realized that I was motivated that morning, and also I saw that there is no representation of the people that they represent, and I am a proud Latina too, and I said we need to have more representation of people of color, women, and Latinos in the assembly. So this is another reason that I am running, and I promise you, the people of McFarland, Monona, Cottage Grove, Town of Dan, and Fitchburg, of course, that I will fight for you. I will fight for your families when I am assembly and representing you. I am a doer. I like, when everyone that knows you, what type of leadership, Julia, they're going to tell you, I am a doer. I want to fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now Tony Hartman.
Thanks. And I want to thank, I did get on to the city council over in Fitchburg last year with Julie at the same time, and let Jimmy know that I'm old enough so that when I started paying attention, it wasn't Brett Favre, it was Bart Starr. So I guess that's why I'm the gray hair factor up here. And thanks, Ron, and of course, Acton McFarland, United Fitchburg, and the city of McFarland for letting us have this great venue tonight. I think all of you who took the time to come out here deserve a little applause too, because you're paying attention, and this is civics and civics 101. So important that we're up here. I want to thank these two for running spirited campaigns, especially. The government's been a bit of a punching bag lately, and not everybody wants to put themselves out there or get involved. But for my part, I'm already involved, and I've been involved for some time. I would say that I'm a proven commodity, the progressive you can count on. I'm born and raised in Dane County and steeped in Wisconsin traditions, high on Midwestern values like working hard and working together. My campaign logo, pretty simple. It's a heart. And it's a heart because I love Wisconsin and because I love people and I want to serve the people of Wisconsin. That's you. It's going to be my full-time job. And what I'll focus on in the assembly is showing our school children and teachers and staff some love, and our roads and bridges some love, and showing our lakes and fields and trees some love. Those may seem like obvious things, but they haven't been happening, so clearly we can do better than what we've been up to recently. We have to work together down at the Capitol. Government that's supposed to represent us has instead been serving special interests and greedy corporations. In a nutshell, that's why I'm running to represent 47. In addition to being born here, I went to school here, and I know firsthand just how great our K through 12 public schools in the UW are. I know what it means to be a Badger and a cheesehead. I go to summer camp and to go to summer camp on one of our fabulous lakes. The people of District 47 can be represented by somebody who's always loved this state and knows it like the back of their hand. You guys all learned that, right? The progressive you can count on. Hey, when I say that I'll fix our roads and bridges, improve our schools, and clean up our lakes, that's not an empty promise, because you've heard politicians make plenty of those. I've already been doing those things. So I do the things I say I'm going to do because I'm the progressive you can count on. Of all the candidates up here, I'm the only one that's experienced Wisconsin public schools as a student, as a teacher, and as a parent. There's no one at this table more capable of understanding what it takes and what the challenges are that face our schools. And I think, I'm not positive, but I may be the only one up here who was down at the Capitol the winter of 2011 in the trenches with many of you. Now, if Julia was there, I'm going to give her lots of credit. And if this guy was there, I'm going to give him even more credit because it's awfully icy on those stairs, especially on the north side. But very important that we were there because obviously the legislature was taking away health care, retirement, and rights from teachers, nurses, and public servants. When it comes to cleaning up our lakes and taking care of our land, there's no one at this table more capable than I am. I've shoveled manure in January to keep it out of our lakes. And from what I know about the legislature, good shoveling technique comes in handy. As a member of the Rock River Watershed Coalition, I've gone out in hip waders, battled mosquitoes in my kayak sometimes to collect water samples from our streams. And I didn't do it because I was getting paid, and I didn't do it because I was running for office. I did it because my parents lived here, my wife and I live here, and our kids live here. I think I'm the only person running that has experienced those environmental challenges firsthand, and that's why I can hit the ground running in January. Also, as many of you know, I'm an avid cross-country skier and biker, and I've been biking on Wisconsin roads for over 50 years. And if you drive a car down a bad road, you spill your coffee, and you probably spend a little more money at the mechanic, right? If you're riding your bike down those same bad roads, you get to know them intimately. Every bump, crack, and pothole. So my backside tells me just how bad our roads have become. And our roads and bridges, that's over 1,000 bridges that continue to fall apart due to lack of investment and maintenance. We can do better together. Governor Walker, you just heard, has divided us. That is so true. Everyone knows that he's given tax breaks to the folks that don't need them, while about 99.7% of us have been neglected. To accomplish this task, we have to be better listeners. Spirited debate is healthy, it's what it's all about, but to solve problems, both sides of the aisle have to come together. Number one on my door card, be good listeners and work together. We are so much better together.
Thank you all very much. Our first question has some potential with overlap from what we just heard, and we're going to begin with Julia. What distinguishes you from the other candidates who are running for this position? And you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I will say that my background, my job background, my education, my community background is one of the mix to represent the District 47. I have been working, I am an elder, so I understand how politics and how some issues affecting local property is so important for our community. And also, I understand budget because I have a financial degree. So it's very important to understand that because Governor Walker in the last in the last couple of two budget cycles has misplaced our budget priorities. And also, I think that I distinguish myself because I have been contacting my senators and my representatives during my tenure working in the community to voice the voice for all of the people left behind, especially working with the Latino community. I have reached my state representative, I have worked with them, sit with them, and tell them what are the needs that we need for our community. So I think that that one is one of the characteristics that differentiate me from the rest. I have experience. I have proven experience. I have been nominated one of the most influential people in Madison last year. I have been nominated one of the women to watch in 2013. So I think I can bring all that. And also I can bring those people that I can work and work with my opponents and have a dialogue and collaboration. And I think that we need that in the Capitol right now.
Thank you, and we'll go to Tony.
Yeah, I'd say what distinguishes me is my ability to connect with people and experience, political and life experiences. They started here during a pretty wonderful Wisconsin childhood. So I grew up inspired by people like Eric and Beth Hayden, like Nobel laureates, Howard Temin, many of you are familiar with, and public school teachers, my cross-country coach, who still lives here in McFarland. Steve Barr, he officiates at WIAA meets still today and runs a small resort on Lake Wabisa. You know, as a kid, I used to sell Thin Mints so I could go to YMCA camp at Camp Wakanda on the north side of Lake Mendota. That was back when the water was still pretty blue. And that's, of course, now where Governor Nelson State Park is. And I guess maybe, speaking of Governor Nelson, you know, he's one of those guys who said we fought like cats and dogs down at the Capitol, but then we went across the street and had a beverage and a meal together, and voila, we worked out, we found agreement on thorny issues. So this is the part of politics that I tell people we really, really need to get back to, and almost everybody nods their head. So when I was teaching and coaching up the road at Northern Michigan University, I learned how powerful working together is, esprit de corps, team spirit, right? And my team won a national title in my third and final year up there, and that was from working closely together toward a common goal, not pointing fingers at each other. So my wife Carolyn and I came back to Wisconsin 15 years ago for the opportunity for our kids to go to school here, and so they could experience what it's like to grow up in a place that still values hard work and people as valuable resources. And I have to say, we're very gratified with the results. I've been a paper boy and a Boy Scout, class president, team captain, Olympic trials athlete, run up Pikes Peak and down Boylston in the Boston Marathon, and I've skied 30 Birkebeiners. I've been a coach at all levels, so I know how to bring people together and do what it takes to win. Something I focus on as the progressive you can count on.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Well, I believe passionately in the progressive values that form the foundation of this district. You know, having knocked on several thousand doors by now, I know how much this community cares about their schools and their environment, and I know that you guys are concerned that, you know, no matter how much you make or who you love or who you care about, that everyone deserves a fair shot and equal treatment. Now, I'm sure my opponents will say similar things, but what distinguishes me from them is that I'm willing to fight for our values. You know, when I saw that we were being represented by somebody who voted to restrict food stamps for the needy, who voted to remove shoreline protections, who voted to privatize our water systems, and who not only voted for Scott Walker, but stood shoulder to shoulder with him on his victory stage, I just knew that didn't represent our values, and so I was willing to stand up and challenge him. Instead, my opponents decided to wait on the sidelines. That's not what it means to be a leader. That's not what it means to be a progressive. Simply put, you can always count on me to defend the things that matter most to you, and to care about the things that you value, no matter what the obstacles and no matter how difficult that may be. That's why I've been endorsed by progressive leaders like Congressman Mark Pocan and former Dane County Executive Kathleen Falk and the Mayor of Fitchburg, Steve Arnold. I've also been endorsed by organizations like the Wisconsin League of Conservation Voters, the Wisconsin Education Association Council, which is one of our district's largest teachers union, and also AFSCME, which is the public sector union here. These organizations could have easily waited till after the primary to make their endorsement, but they decided to endorse me because they know that I'm going to fight for you guys. And so I just want you to know that you can always count on me no matter what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question will start with Tony. How do you envision translating your values into policy, given you will be working with a Republican governor and a Republican majority in the Assembly?
Well, there's actually a couple of ways. First one is you know, the job that you have when you're in the minority is to get yourself into the majority. So that's pretty important. Starting August 10th, I already decided I'm going to be working on at least 4 or 5 other races outside of Dane County that are red to blue battlegrounds. These are for control of the Capitol now. If we flip 3 seats in the Senate, we'd have a majority and be able to handle and be able to, you know, stop the rubber stamping, this terrible rubber stamping that's been going on down there. The other way, of course, is to find common ground. And that's a longer battle. It can happen, though. We all have common values. My recent experiences working on the Fitchburg City Council, many of you know this, have taught me more about this. The council president and I think he's here, I saw him come into the back, Dan, don't always see eye to eye on some of the city's bigger challenges, but I thought, how am I going to get through and how can we work together? So, it turns out we both like classic rock. And in fact, Dan plays drums in a classic rock band. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go hear him play. And of course, afterwards, we shared a beverage. I was determined to work with him on something positive for our citizens. So this year, I brought him a plan for the city to buy buses like the Monona Express. We will now, we hope, have a Fitchburg Express and will increase transportation choice. Just last month, we introduced and co-sponsored this amendment at the city's capital improvement plan kickoff. So I think folks in Wisconsin have common values: tall trees, fresh air, pastoral farmland, honest, friendly, unpretentious people, and a safe place to raise our kids and educate them. So I guess we could probably find some common ground with Republicans who last year drafted legislation to protect children from unsafe placement of sex offenders and legislation that requires first-time drunk driving offenders to at least appear in court. I know this opportunity exists, so let me just say, the progressive you can count on is going to reach down and take care of some of those things. We're going to work together.
I'll go with Jimmy.
I will say that is a difficult question to answer. There are opportunities to work together with Republicans on policies, but I only will do so if they will genuinely make the people's lives in this district better. I see that there's some opportunities when it comes to criminal justice reform or dealing with the problems with opiates that have been affecting our state. But I have to admit, these past 6 years have made me skeptical. I hear too often that all Democrats have to do is reach across the aisle. But let me ask you, have you seen Scott Walker and the Republicans in the legislature reaching across the aisle lately? Did they reach across the aisle when they decimated our unions through Act 10? Did they reach across the aisle when they cut millions of dollars out of our schools and universities? Or when they dismantled the GAB? Or when they hamstrung the DNR? Or when they refused the Medicaid expansion? The only way that I can really see us turning real progressive values into policy is if we make our state blue again. And I'm going to make that happen. We can talk about improving education and fixing our environment and defending a woman's right to choose, but none of that's going to happen while Republicans have majorities. A big reason why Congressman Mark Buchanan's endorsed me, along with Assembly Democrats like Jonathan Brostaff and Daniel Reamer and Mandela Barnes, is because they know that I'm going to put in the hard work to knock on the doors and to do the fundraising and to make the phone calls to make sure that we turn our state blue again. They know, they've seen how many hundreds of hours I've spent on my own race, and they know that I'm going to work just as hard for them to make this state blue. Thanks.
Thank you. Julia?
Yes, so it's a difficult question. A lot of people are asking me that question, why you're doing this? Why you're doing is you get elected, you're going to be a minority there because, we have a majority, we have a Republican governor, we have a majority in the Senate, but as Tony mentioned, I am a person that I know how to work together with other people, and I have the experience because I have done that working in my community for the last 10 years. I have been able to work with different group of people and different ideas, and I know we need to compromise sometimes, and then we need to cooperate sometimes. This is what I always say, that I think that people in my district want an state representative that is going to go there, and it's not going to, be, an observer and don't have that collaboration with the opposition. I think we need to have. I believe that, this is what I will mention. This is a Venn diagram. I have the Republican, the Democrat, and there are some people there in the middle. I believe that there are some Republicans that they care about education, they care about women's rights, they care about K-12 education, they care about the UW. I know that we need to find those people and work together, and then we can make this bigger. I believe that maybe people, you can call me that I am naive, okay? But I believe that we can find those people and work together. Because I would say, when we talk about contamination in water, I am assuming that everyone cares about the health of our children, our citizens. So I think that we need to put first Wisconsin people first, and then our political view in another bucket. Sometimes we need to, and then we need to work together.
Thank you. And our last question, we'll go back to Jimmy with the first response. What are your thoughts about the issue of local control vis-a-vis a Republican Party that has been attempting to usurp local control?
So I definitely disagree with the Republican efforts to try to thwart local control. And I believe in the ideals of federalism. The federal government, I believe, should set the basement, should set the floor, and states can decide whether or not they want to build upon the floor that the federal government has set. So take issues like the minimum wage or environmental protection issues or workplace protections. States can choose to continue to build on that or to stay at that basement, whatever it is that the federal government has mandated. Similarly, I believe that local government should have the opportunity to build on whatever it is the state sets as their own particular basement. So if they want to raise money through referendums to fix their schools or to pass additional environmental regulations like we saw with the Enbridge pipeline, I think that local communities should be free to do so. However, I disagree with the idea of local communities trying to once again thwart whatever it is that the state sets at their basement. So local communities should be allowed to build on what it is that the state has created, but should not be able to go below those standards. Thank you.
Thank you. And Julia?
Yes, so I strongly support local control because, as an elder in the city, and I can understand better what are the issues affecting our community and who are the best people to solve those people, that the people that, they live there and they are the representative of these people, the community. So I really believe that the municipalities should have the control of some of their own issues. And also, I was very upset when one of the Bill 533 it was close to my heart because when it was, the Senate blocked the many immigrants in Milwaukee for receiving a local ID card. So that one is a very clear usurpation of local control. So I'm gonna fight for to keep if I am a state assembly to keep that control at the local municipalities.
Thank you. Tony?
Yeah, so as a local official, I care about local control. It's pretty important for all of us. Dane County was on its way to creating a county-wide transit authority just a few years back, and when the GOP got into control, well, they took away that possibility. So now we have an uneven mix of transportation choices, better in some parts of the county than others, but not coordinated. I don't get how that makes any sense. I mean, for goodness sake, it was Eisenhower, right, a Republican, who said government exists to take care of those things that private sector won't or shouldn't. So at least let the citizens decide on things like that at the local level. I talk about roads at the outset. This year, we can't finish projects in Milwaukee and right here in Verona Road on the end of District 47. So businesses and citizens are dealing with that for at least another year. Senator Erpenbach, State Bill 763, he offered a fix that would have at least allowed us to borrow money to push that through to the finish line. And then he would have added a nickel a gallon to the cost of fuel, but that would have allowed us to pay the debt service on that. I'm not sure people would have noticed a nickel a gallon with the volatility we've had in fuel prices here, but it would have been a good fix. Of course, it didn't make it to the floor. I think Democrats, all of us as Democrats, understand it's necessary to invest in our roads, bridges, and infrastructure if we want to grow a healthy economy. As far as schools go, we continue to ask school districts to do more with less, and we've sunk to a new low because now we contribute less to schools than any other state except Arizona. I think even North Carolina funds at 2/3 of the public school costs, while Wisconsin's down to about half. So districts are forced to go to referendums, which we're still passing just to pay for operating expenses. There are some solutions, and I'm going to throw one out there real quick. I'm big on this. I wear my button. I wear it when I do doors. clean energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency projects at every school in this state could employ 4,000 to 5,000 people and give us enough money in savings to pay for those school teachers, okay, to pay them what they're worth and the staffers. So we can do this, and these would be 4 to 5 good-paying jobs for women and for men.
Thank you. And now it's your turn. We actually had planned to leave the majority of our time for questions for you. I have to turn this on. Here we go. And the only stipulation, I want to ask you to ask kind of general questions of all three candidates rather than specific questions for a particular person, and we'll try to rotate the responses as we've been doing. So, do I have a first volunteer for a question? Thank you very much. And they'll have 2 minutes each to respond, and we're going to start doing it.
Hi, my name is Janine Schneider, and I live in the town of Blooming Grove. I'm wondering, of you, do you know that the town of Blooming Grove is in the 47th district?
Yes.
Okay. Because at the beginning of this, well, the town of Blooming Grove was neglected. In the newspaper article about this, the town of Blooming Grove was neglected. And do you realize how chopped up the town of Blooming Grove is in your district? Because I live behind the McDonald's on Watt Street. And I'm part of your district, and I guess my question is, I feel really gerrymandered where I live. I feel like I don't have representation where I live. If I have problems, it's usually with the city of Madison, and they don't listen because I live in the town of Blooming Grove. My town is dissolving in about 10 years. And so my town board has very little power in dealing with the issues for those of us who are basically surrounded by Melissa Sargent's district. So my question to you is, do you have any plans, if left to the assembly, to deal with gerrymandering and redistricting come the next census?
I think that the issue with redistricting is a issue that is affecting all of us, you know, and I think this is an issue that we need to fix because the way everything is established right now is not the correct way. And this is happening with me when I was starting looking for the 47th district, you know, and I started looking the map. And it was so confusing, so confusing. I know there are some areas of Madison is part of the district, and it's so confusing. So I think we need to do something about that. I don't know exactly how, because, you know, it's something that I need to maybe learn how to do it and talk to other people, but I think it's confusing because I have seen it, you know, and people are talking about that, you know, some area of, you know that, and we are going through now in Fitchburg with the annexation of town of Madison. So we are dealing with that issue too. So maybe we need to determine what is the best option for your town. You know, is an annexation to the city of Madison, or, you know, and maybe it could be, one of the solutions. And maybe to work with the local authority in your town and say how is the best, you know, if we need to accelerate the process of the annexation. But because this is what happened when you have in your case, you know, people know that in 10 years you're going to dissolve. So why we are going to invest, why we are going to care. And so maybe we need to deal in the short term. This is what I can.
Okay, good question, Janine.
Yeah.
I have volunteered recently near your district, right on the corner almost, St. Vincent de Paul over there with Major Moore. I've had some dealings. I like to volunteer for things because that's how you find out where these little nooks and crannies are in Dane County. I was aware, and I apologize. We haven't been to your backyard yet. I've been to all 3 other townships, but not to Blooming Grove, although I have a volunteer that lives right on the edge of it, and he and I are going to go over there tomorrow because you just moved it up on the priority list. I want to say that, this is a growth issue, clearly. We need to make sure that you have representation that's reasonable. When it comes to gerrymandering, I mean, this has already been done in Iowa. 30 years ago, they created a board, and this is a board that's somewhat removed from whoever's in power at any given time. Board members come on board the way it used to work out with the DNR here. And that's created very fair districts in Iowa. So I would say that that's exactly what I would be working on at the Assembly, and I'm sure that I wouldn't have any trouble finding support for that notion. And I'm hoping that it would help people like you, because clearly, this is a representational government, and if you don't know who you're representing or who is representing you, that's a problem. The other thing I do is I put my cell phone number on this door card, and everybody should have it. So please call me. I want to know what issues you have. Like Jimmy, I ask at the door often, what issues should I know about? Please tell me. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your question. I was actually in Blooming Grove doing doors just about a week ago, and that issue actually came up at one of the doors because they were saying that Madison is slowly just eating Blooming Grove over the past few years, and they were concerned that Blooming Grove was no longer going to be a city and what that would look like in the next 10 years or so. I could understand your frustration, and I spoke to people that live on the edge of Madison and Monona and feel like that they don't get proper representation because they're basically in Monona, but then they're not able to access their local officials in Madison. So, and like you said, it's reflective of the redistricting that's been happening since 2010. And it was a situation where Democrats did not have the foresight to see what was going to be happening in 2010 with Republicans taking over redistricting. And when they took it over, they took it over. I think that Democrats still win a majority of the state, but their assembly, we get less than a third of the representation. And so Tony is right, where we need to move to the independent redistricting model that Iowa has, making sure that we're drawing lines that make sense based upon where people live in the district lines and where where towns lie, and not based upon whether or not you can get 54.6% Republican in a particular district. There's hope that there is a lawsuit that's currently being filed that will eventually get to the Supreme Court and overturn the current redistricting what we have now and go towards a more equitable model. But the goal is that Democrats need to be in power in 2020 so that way we can pass that legislation and make sure that we have independent redistricting.
Next.
My name is Nancy Horns. I'm from Fitchburg. And I would like to know if any of you have any thoughts, and especially if you have a plan for bringing equity to K-12 public education funding in this state.
I think we're going to start with Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. That's a great question. And as I mentioned briefly, I think it's not a reach to actually initiate renewable energy at every school in Wisconsin, 100% renewable energy. We will have to borrow money to do this, but there's a lot of federal money available. If we did that and we went after energy efficiency, it's not as sexy, but boy, does it save money. We would have more money in our school districts. That would be my first initiative. Now, the other thing I would say, since when I decided to get into this race, I was on the phone with Sandy Pope, and she is number one in the assembly in terms of the Democrats for education. We can't just go down there and assume that we have all the answers. I tell people this at the door, too. It is about you. I mean, the good answers and the good solutions are out there, and they exist. They live now in the assembly and in the Senate, but they're not all being heard, of course. So clearly, stuff that I can definitely jump in on right away would be huge savings for the school districts, and that especially goes for parts of the state that are hurting even more than we are down here in Dane County. So I would be all over that because I think that there is immediate cash available. So,
I was honored to earn the endorsement of WEAC, which, as I said before, is one of the larger teacher unions here. And when I met with them, the story that I kept hearing over and over was that teachers wanted to be the best teachers that they could for their students, but they couldn't because the funding just doesn't let them. And that is heartbreaking. I'm a product of public schools. If I didn't have good teachers, I would not have been able to go to college. And if I wasn't for a strong university, I wouldn't have been able to go to law school. And what it takes is we need to make sure that we're making education a focus for the state again. And I know I kind of harp on this, but until we're able to have Democrats in power in the Assembly and the Senate, we're not going to see that happening again. Whenever Republicans look for ways to cut funds, it's always our schools that are the ones that are having to take the brunt of that action. And I personally am sick of it. And that's a big reason why I got into this race. It's why that if I'm lucky enough to win come August 9th, August 10th, I'm going to be going all across the state and fighting for other Democrats that have a real opportunity to win and flip seats in the Senate, so that way we have a roadblock there to stop the Republicans from their craziest shenanigans and force real focus again to be placed on our schools. I personally will not stand another vote and will not vote again for anything that would cut funding for our schools in our state. Thank you.
Yes, it's a good question, and I know because firsthand I've had kids in the public school system, and I know how the cut in funding in the last couple of years is affecting the school. I sent my kid to Leopold School in Madison, one of the most controversial schools because of the lack of funding, overcrowding. And I think that I agree with Jimmy. Until we don't have a majority representation in the Assembly and the Senate, every bill that is thrown to us is not going to be. If we don't have the majority, we are not going to be able to do anything because it's a continue doing with the cutting. And I am very upset also with what is happening with the vouchers. Voucher is another way to redistrict of a fund for the public system to the private sector, and also the private school. And also the tax deduction for person who send a kid to private school, that it was established in 2014. That one is another way to decrease revenue that the state needs to invest in public school. So I think we need to, work hard and fight hard that in the next cycle in our budget we have more funding for public school, because we are not going to be able to prepare the workforce of the future and compete in the global market if we are not, preparing our kid for what is next. Okay, so I believe 100% education, because I am a product of education. And if we don't have that opportunity to all the children in this state, okay, we need to fight. This is number one priority. It's going to be hard. We don't, until we don't have the majority to be able to, to increase in our budget more funding for public school. It's going to be hard.
I'm Dan Carpenter. As Tony said, I'm the president of the Fitchburg Common Council. So I have a question. Due to the nature of my day job, as the three of you know, I'm a legislative aide for a Democratic state representative from Trempealeau, Wisconsin, which is a very rural community just north of La Crosse. Every assembly district represents about 57,000 people, and for my boss's assembly district to get to that 57,000 takes 2.5 counties. Trempealeau, Buffalo, and the western half of Jackson County. And so I work at the state capitol. I've been working for Representative Dano for 5.5 years. And one thing that we've seen in the last 5 years, and I know it's a major concern for my boss and is one for me too, when I was trying to figure out where I was going to go for college, we always heard talk of the brain drain. We always heard how people get educated here in the state of Wisconsin and then they take their education and skills elsewhere. Well, now it seems like when we meet with groups in the Capitol, whether it's the future business leaders, the Farm Bureau, good kids. I mean, kids that my boss always says, these are the kids that I want my kids hanging out with. When we ask them, where are you going to go for school? Where do you see yourself, in the next 5 years? These kids are in the Mississippi River area, so they get Minnesota TV, and so maybe they're exposed to it, but we're finding more and more that Wisconsin kids are choosing to go across the river for college. And when we ask them why, they say, well, I want to be a teacher. Why would I want to stay in Wisconsin? Or they say, it seems like there's a lot more opportunity. There's a lot more jobs. There's a lot more good stuff happening in Minnesota. what's your plan to make sure that we retain our kids, that we don't just retain them post-college, but that we retain them here for college? What's your plan to make sure that Wisconsin kids go to Wisconsin universities? Thank you.
To Jimmy for the first response.
So yeah, I spoke to a university professor who was a mathematician, and I was at his door, and he talked about how just this new culture since Republicans had taken over in 2010 has made it really difficult for him to stay. And in fact, he had taken a job over in New York because he knew that he was going to be able to have the research and the funding that he needed to be able to work and to attract other graduate students. And it was frustrating. And you know, for me, the story was different. You know, in 2008, when I came here, I was so excited to become a Badger because I loved the school and I loved the sports teams, but I also knew that I was getting a world-class education. And until we're able to prove to kids that we're actually going to make an effort, that we're going to actually start funding our universities, not just here in Madison, but in Whitewater and Superior and all over the state, and that we show them that they're going to have real opportunities to find jobs once they get out of school, it's going to be incredibly difficult. We need to find unique and new ways to be able to attract people to come to this state, whether it's coming up with accepting funds so that we can start building new green jobs, which is not only good jobs for manufacturing, but allows people to have unique agricultural educational experiences that are applicable to large green job projects. But again, it just comes back down to making a new culture in our state and making sure that we're focusing on things like education to attract students to make sure that they want to stay.
Okay, so I would say the first thing that we need to do is get rid of Walker, you know. Yeah, I see that because I work with, you know, I have a kid that is going to go to college next year. He's a senior. And I asked him, where do you want to go? He never mentioned Wisconsin. He said California, Minnesota. I want to leave this state, he told me. You know? And I said, why? Because it's becoming too conservative for me. It's becoming too, I don't see opportunities, you know? So, and this is happening in my house, okay? And I'm talking to other moms, and they also have the same, you know, issues. You say, my kid is going to Minnesota. My kid is going to Minnesota. You know, I have several kids that we went to West High School, and they're going to Minnesota. And I think this is we need to change the culture of, we need to improve the quality of life of our state. And how do you improve the quality of life of your state? You improve with a better UW, better school, better environment, and also you need to create an environment for economic development too, okay? Entrepreneurship, startups, you know. There is a good startup industry here in Wisconsin, is the gaming. Maybe you don't know about that. How do we make that happen? How we can be the 04 Silicon Valley here? But we need to invest, okay? We need to invest in infrastructure. If we don't have a good road, trains, we don't have a system of train, you know, how we can make commute people from one place to another one. So we need to create that quality of life to attract people to a city. And everything happens with different factors. Economic development is one, transportation, good school, good universities.
Thanks. I've had a number of startups here since I've been back in Wisconsin this past 15 years. I've worked with John Biondi down at D2P, Discovery to Product at the university. Tom Still, the Wisconsin Innovation Network. Many of you are probably familiar with the Governor's Business Plan Contest. It's one of many things he does to stimulate and I think push the new economy forward. You hear people talking about the new economy, but that's where we have to go because, you know, minimum wage jobs are not going to cut it. As my grandfather used to say, he said we can only cut each other's hair and shave each other so much. You know, this is about new economy jobs, clean tech. We have this engine, this $15 billion engine at the university, and we are not doing much to promote that. We have people like Judy Faulkner, who's got $1 billion industry, and she has not been getting any love from Governor Walker, not that she needs it. But, you know, it's amazing to me that these kinds of things are not being trumpeted far and wide. I mean, if you want to keep people here, it's not too hard. Both of my kids have been at the UW. My son is a freshman, or actually just finished his freshman year, and he's really excited. He never wanted to go anybody else or anywhere else. But I've been to Minnesota and the University of Wisconsin, and I can tell you there's no place like home. It's a much more fun place to be in school, and the teachers are oh so bright here. We have a catalytic expert, Jim Dumesic, at the university, a chemical engineer who's #1 in the world for catalytic chemistry. And if you can't get kids excited about that, you're not taking advantage of what the university does on a regular basis. You could bring them down here, and they could spend an entire weekend at some of the science events that go on here. And I would just say that, you know, I'm sad to hear that, you know, Dan, but I don't doubt it. Certainly what's going on over in Minnesota is pretty exciting to kids who are way, you know, closer to Minneapolis than they are to Madison. So I'm guessing maybe we should take a couple of those buses we're going to buy and send them up to Trempealeau County once in a while and bring children back down here.
I forget who's first this time.
I think Julia's next.
Thank you. My name is Sheila Plotkin. I live in McFarland. You talked a lot about common ground, but I think there's an issue that is fundamental to everything that's going on in this state, and that is acknowledgement that there is such a thing as the public good. And what I see in the Republican legislature in the State House is that they do not believe in the public good. They believe that the private is moral and the public is not. So my question to you is, how will you engage in conversations about that issue? Because decisions are being made based on that belief that somehow public is immoral. They're not funding our state parks. They're not funding our public schools. They are determined to undermine our public university, and I believe that that is the reason. So how do you talk to your legislative colleagues about that issue?
I think that one of the issues that is affecting all of that is how much money is going to politics and campaign lately. And this is not affecting people, how they vote. And we can see it at national level because it's more visible. And I think that one, and we can see it at local level. We have people, this is what I see, the people with money, they can run and they can win election. Or people with contacts, you know, they have, they can have more power, and they are more influenced by those people that put in there, you know, because it's, you know. So this is, I think we need to have a finance reform. Is critical to have, because we all can be, we need to level the field for everyone, because so this is how is some corporation or private position are affecting the view of our politician, you know, because some of them, they are buying our politicians, okay? And we can see it in all of the levels. And I believe that we need to start with reforming our finance, how people are getting elected to office. And I believe that we can see it with Trump right now, you know, and we can believe that people got, in my case, I am a regular folk, you know, I don't have money, and to run this campaign, it takes me more than a village, you know, people, you know what I mean? But people that have the means, it's so more easy to do that. Or people that have the contact, I give you the big check, you know, then when you are in office, you have to do favors. So this is what I believe that we need to do. Finance reform is critical to avoid all of that.
So, Sheila, I remember the good old days. And what I remember is that there was a focus on public good. And when I was a little boy, my dad used to come into the bedroom at night. We had a bunk bed I shared with my little brother, and he would ask, who's your best friend? And I would say, you, Daddy, and Arnie, my brother, and President Kennedy. So I guess that makes me old enough to, remember the good old days, but still young enough to do something about it. And I think we can bring those back again. I'm very positive. I agree with Julie on campaign finance reform. I was so gung-ho and so happy. It was the happiest I ever was with McCain that he actually got on board with Russ Feingold to sponsor that legislation. But, I think that clearly it's almost a systemic thing here, that we really, really have to start working on this at a grassroots level. And if you look at the number of people that are disgruntled with the Republican and the Democratic Party, you will find a pretty close answer to what, the public good is. I'm not sure. I mean, I would say more people identify in Dane County as independents than anything else. And they say that because they're searching for answers. And I think for us, those answers start with, we get out and we demonstrate good behavior. I mean, that's always what it's about. When I was a coach, I couldn't keep up with my fastest athletes, but I'll tell you what, I busted my butt to get up the hill, and I showed him what hard work was all about. And, I think it's the same way here. We have to be nicer to each other. We cannot be, demeaning each other personally. Healthy debate, good, and after that, we have our beverage, and we find the common ground, and we get over and, solve these thorny issues.
Jimmy?
You mentioned public parks, and I remember there was a discussion as to the idea of privatizing some of the advertisements there at the parks. And I just worry about the day that we're going to have Devil's Lake brought to you by Doritos. And so there's two things. One, absolutely we need campaign finance reform to get money out of politics, because what ends up happening is that you get too much money into the hands of too few, and then those people are able to continue to coalesce the opportunities out there. And then so you see things like the push towards private vouchers for our public schools. And we see what happens in other states when that happens. You get someone that's unscrupulous, that's willing to open up a private school in a location that can't support, say, 2 high schools, and he hires himself as the principal, pays himself $500,000, doesn't care whether the school succeeds or fails, and ends up with our tax money, and he walks away scot-free, and who ends up suffering? Students. But I think just as important is we need people like yourself being unafraid to say public good. We need more people in office that are not afraid to say that they support, public options. We need more people that are not afraid of saying that government can provide good, clean, efficient services to people. And once we're able to share that message with more people, and particularly people outside of Dane County, Milwaukee, I know so many people here that really do care about their government and what it can provide, but we need to make sure that we're going and talking to people outside of these areas about what their public schools are doing for them and why they should be passionate about their public schools and why they should be passionate about the public good. So thank you for being one of those people, and I hope that everyone else in here is not afraid of talking about the public good.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mike. I live over in Cedar Places, in the Cedar Places neighborhood board. So one thing I think about Active McFarland is that the members of Active McFarland, it's just not a cute name. They're very engaged in campaigns and elections, but they also put a very high premium and value on contact with legislators. I know Sheila Plotkin was recently rewarded for her efforts with the Public Records Project she made of Republican legislative offices, asking them for copies of the contacts from constituents and then trying to follow through and see how they actually voted. So my question to you all is, if Sheila was to make a similar project and ask the current representative for his records over the last 4 years and say, well, have you contacted the representative, and what bill did you contact him about during the last 4 years? What bill would you be able to come back and cite to Sheila?
Good question, Mike. I'm not, a secret place, is that a neighborhood? Okay, I should. That's on my list now too because I love going to secret places. I guess as far as what bill, it's interesting how this works nowadays too. You get these alarming messages, and I get plenty of them every day. Most of them are from the Democrats, but I do get them from Blue Jean Nation now too. Of course, everybody finishes with "send money immediately," "send before midnight," that kind of thing. I think that these are. It's a shame because we get bombarded, right, with this stuff. And in fact, some of it's more important. And we really need to pay attention. I do go to several of those, put your name here. And as soon as you do, your name's on there, you're going to be getting a lot of emails. And the first thing that pops up is not thanks for weighing in. It's, oh my gosh, send money. I think we need to get away from that. Okay, I know that schools across the nation teach development, how to extract money from passionate people. But, we've been pushing that button a little bit too hard. When I was going to school here at the university, taking my first psych course, and I had to train a rat, how to press a bar so that you get a little pellet to eat. They found out that intermittent reinforcement, so he didn't get a pellet every time, or she didn't get a pellet every time. I never figured out how to tell which was which. But, the funny thing was 5 or 6 times they got the pellet. Well, then, they would press that button like crazy. And, I think this is sort of where we've gotten to. I also know from polling that if you call 6,000 people, for example, in District 47, you might get 50 that would respond. That tells me there's a lot of fatigue out there in this. So the really important issues don't come to light anymore. So I don't know if that answers your question completely, Mike, but I think as I understood it. I'll turn it over to Jimmy.
I would say the angriest letter that I probably wrote to one of my representatives had to do when Republicans were trying to pull back the sunshine laws, which is kind of funny that we talk about, that's exactly what is it you were trying to, or what you were able to do to, kind of show Republicans that they're not actually representing the people that they're supposed to be representing. But when Republicans went out and tried to claw back secrecy, to try to hide their text messages, to try to make it so that you can't get access to all of their documents, that disturbed me at a very deep level, because at the very base level, we should be unafraid of anything that we do, vote, or say, or talk to. I would hopefully, if I had a magic wand, I would expand those sunshine laws as much as humanly possible, because in the end, nothing that we do as elected officials should be hidden from the public. And so I hope that answers your question. So yeah, that was the most recent, or not the most recent, but the most angriest letter that I've written to Robin Voss over maybe the past 6 months.
Okay, yes, I, during my tenure working for the Latino community, I met with a lot of people. I met with even with the state senator, representative here in Wisconsin, with the people trying to talk about immigration reform. Several times we met with them. Also with Mayor Paul Soglin, I met with him several times to discuss economic development for the minorities, people of color, and Latinos in Dane County and in Madison. Also with Executive Joe Parisi, several times I met with them to voice my concern. With my representative, fighting for our February immigration laws affecting the ID in Milwaukee and all of the sanctuary cities, the Bill SB 533 and the AB 430. So, and also when I was in Fitchburg, before I was an alder, I had the opportunity also to reach my, my mayor for some concern too. So I have done that because it's our role as a citizen to reach out, and express our voice. So I have been reaching all the people at the different levels, okay, to voice for all those people that they don't have a voice. So I am proud to say, because I am Latina, most of the issues affecting our community, my tenure working with the Latino Chamber was talking about how immigration reform affect the life of Latinos. So I met with several people to talk about this issue. So I have been doing my duties.
Thank you.
full disclosure, I am a supporter of Jimmy, and I wanted to ask one question. Our current office holder for this district, Rob Call, has suddenly decided to step down, surprising a lot of his constituents. And what I wanted to know from all three of you is, how do you feel about his service, his voting record, and if you had any concerns, what did you do about it? Thanks. And I think we're going to go for the first one.
So when I had talked about during my introduction, one of the big reasons why I got into this race was because the person who currently represented me had not only voted for Scott Walker, but had stood shoulder to shoulder with him during his victory party when he won his race for governor. And when I think of Scott Walker, I don't think of the 47th district. I don't think I've been to a single door where people have been really excited about what he's done to our state over these past 6 years. And I just want you all to know that it didn't sit well with me, and that's why I challenged him when he was an incumbent. And I just felt that if you don't think that Scott Walker is right for our state, then you should be able to stand up and say so. And it's why I decided to run for originally run against the incumbent. It's why I'm still running now, and hopefully, when I get into office, we can start to turn back some of the things that he's done to our state. Thank you.
Okay, so when I am doing the doors in Monona and McFarland, especially, people, I think they really like Rob Carr. So I disagree with your comments. I was surprised. He's very popular. People like what he has been done in the assembly for us. Maybe he voted for Walker, but then I don't have any issues. Maybe one or two things that I can disagree with our state representative, but I think that I think he's done a very good job. And I don't see that when I do the doors, when Rob, we are going to miss. And I said, we are going to miss him, and he was a good guy. So this is the sense that I get when I do indoors, especially Monona and McFarland. We always are going to disagree with people. We don't have to see eye to eye, even if we are from the same party, okay? Even we we disagree with family. So I think that Rob did I would say, a decent job representing all of us. I am very fortunate that he fight a lot, very hard for the Verona funding for the Verona road construction in our part of our district. I think he was instrumental to the release of funding for that project to continue. So I don't have anything to say.
Yeah, so Rob is an interesting name. When you come to doors, I would have to say that what Julia says is at least partly true, but I've found people on both sides of Rob. And I would say, had Rob been in another part of the state besides Dane County, what a wonderful uniting kind of figure. I think the problem here is, of course, for him that 2 out of 3 people are fairly progressive and fairly left of center, and so the fact that he has reached across the aisle quite a bit and came out and said that he voted for Walker, which makes you wonder about his judgment right out of the gate. But I think that clearly he was probably trying to be a uniter. I don't hold anything. I don't feel like he is a huge disappointment in any way. He's actually raised a lot of money for Democrats around this state, and so I don't have anything bad to say, but I would say that clearly, he's the kind of guy that probably is good on your team. And that's because he does know how to talk to everybody, and he certainly has proven that, in fact, I think we're going to see him in 2 years. I think he'll be one of the Democrats that steps up to run for governor. When I asked him to his face, I have to say my biggest disappointment with Rob is he wouldn't call me back when I first started calling him when I decided to get into this race. So when I finally buttonholed him down at the concourse, we had a nice talk, and we found out we had a lot in common. And sure enough, I think, when I asked him if he was going to run for governor, he just laughed, and he didn't say no. So anyway, I'll say keep your eyes open for Rob.
Audience? Are you?
protect lakes, rivers, and streams of drinking water for recreation, for economic development, and for drinking.
So this is something that I am learning too about clean water and all of how is, we live in a district where we have lakes, okay? And it's important for us, our district how to keep those lakes, clean and without pollution. And also the other issue that concern me a lot about clean water is what we are doing with the high pump, how do you call it? Capacity walls. This is an issue that I am researching and learning, and the more I learn, the more disturbing is how it's affecting our water tables. And I started with a conversation with someone, a friend of ours that is a professor and specializes in water resources, and he made me see how this thing is impacting, some areas of our state. So it's something that I am very concerned because water is a commodity. We need to keep it, It's going to be one of the resources that eventually we need to protect the most. I will try to do my best to protect that. I am learning a lot, and I am very disappointed of what is happening at the Capitol with the high-capacity pump. And this is something that we need to review and change.
Thanks. Good question, Amber. I've worked with people down at the university. In fact, Dr. Mark Anderson, who's one of his quotes is on my door card, because these are the people that have solutions to some of the issues that we're facing. In particular, he's worked on many nanoporous thin film coatings to help clean up water. But I think before you go high-tech, we don't have to look too far to find out where all the nutrients are coming from that are polluting our waterways. And they are polluting them with what you would think is, the traditional, toxic stuff that's coming in. These are things that we just need to find in the right fields at the right times. Many of you may know that Steve Carpenter in limnology down at the university has been decorated. I think he won a prize from, I'm not sure if it was the King of Sweden. It wasn't a Nobel Prize, but he went over there to pick that up and brought back a few $100,000 to, I think, stimulate, to catalyze his programs down there. And one of the things that, we can all do is we can encourage the use of our tax dollars for things like buffer strips. There's adaptive management going on in Dane County right now, and that's something that can be done anywhere. Buffer strips, cover crops, a lot of these things are good farming practices, and you'll find most of the farmers in the state support them. And so some of our public dollars are going to stimulate that or to match. A lot of that happens through the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I've been the recipients of some of their grants, so I've been successful at writing for state, federal, and local grant dollars. I see that as akin to writing a compelling story or a compelling initiative. I think those are some of the things that I'll work on, and that's very near and dear to my heart. Clean water is just like clean energy, and as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing more noble than that, and my campaign treasurer, Ada Deer, will definitely, I think, stand up when we start talking about clean water, because she's been on that path for a long time, and most of it starts up in the Northwoods and flows this direction. So I mentioned the Rock River Coalition, and I want to give them a shout out because a lot of volunteers doing great work out there to monitor the waterways in Wisconsin.
So, thank you for addressing this really important issue, and especially as the decades are going to continue, we're going to see issues around climate change put a lot more pressure on our water resources. Oops, sorry, a little spasm there. Part of the fun of being a quadriplegic. Sorry there. No, and so we're going to see a lot more pressure being put onto our water resources. I grew up in California, and I still have friends back there that talk about what happens when you have all the kinds of high capacity pumping that happens out there that's literally lowered the amount, like the ground level there several feet. And if we continue to allow that to happen out here in Wisconsin, we're going to see the continued degradation of a lot of our water resources. particularly when it comes to, or one of the solutions that I would want to implement is putting restrictions on the kinds of fertilizers being used throughout the state and the number and how often they're being sprayed. I have heard time and time again about wells that are just being so poisoned with nitrates that people just can't even drink out of their faucets anymore. And I think once you can't drink the water that is supposed to be coming out of your faucets anymore, we need to analyze what we're doing. We also need to give the DNR the independence it needs in order to make sure that we're doing the good science so that we know what we need to be doing to address those water issues. And I've been lucky enough to be endorsed by the Wisconsin League of Conservation Voters, who are some of the foremost authorities on addressing water issues, and I would trust their judgment with anything that they would want to do in order to fix the problems at our state. But again, starts with the DNR, giving them their independence, and making sure that they can do the good science that we need to make sure we protect our waterways for generations to come.
I think we would have time for just one more question if anyone would like. And if not, well,
I just want to thank a few people. I want to thank
My friend Denny Blackmore for keeping time there. Good job. So, some of you know he was the high school debate coach. And I want to thank Eric Redding and his staff for setting this all up and recording it all, and it will be almost immediately on YouTube. So great technology. I want to thank all of you for coming and asking intelligent questions. I'm happy with the turnout. You organize things like this and you wonder whether people will show up, so I really do appreciate on behalf of United Fitchburg and Active McFarland. And I want to thank, we have 3 great candidates. We're very fortunate. They're going to each now give a 2-minute closing, and I think we're going to start with Tony.
All right. Thanks again, Ron. I do want to thank everybody in the audience. It's great to see this turnout. So I guess to be clear, I want to bring Wisconsin back together. I want to get things working again for our children and our families. And as a parent to 2 children who've attended our public schools and the UW, where I've attended myself, like my mother before me, who's in the second row here, UW class of 52, a retired public school librarian, so I better watch what I say about public schools, you bet. You know, we've got to restore the money that the governor's taken away. There's just no doubt about that. We have to be smart about this, though. People in other parts of the state and some here in Dane County want some choices. So we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We instead then find more money, and it's out there. I mentioned one way to do it, and I can show you those numbers if you're interested in how we can, you know, make our schools these bastions of clean energy and of, you know, energy efficiency, and that will free up some dollars. But more importantly, I think, you know, I've mentioned cleaning up our lakes and waterways. I'm very involved in that and have been since I got back to Wisconsin. And, of course, fix up our roads and bridges, creating more good-paying jobs for women and for men, and I think equal pay for that work. We can do this, folks. This can happen, okay? I remember the days when people who disagreed on how to do things figured it out. They figured out how to work together for the common good, and I know we can do this. I have Midwestern values and experiences. I was born here, and did I mention I went to school here? Mm-hmm. I am Wisconsin. It'll be my honor to serve you in the state legislature, and I'll finish by saying now's the time to be bold, and all you have to do is vote for Tony, the progressive you can count on. Thanks.
So thank you again, everybody, for coming out. You know, having heard from all of us, you guys now have a really important decision to make. The question is, who do you trust to fight for the issues that really matter to you? And while all 3 of us have talked about certain progressive values that we share, only one of us stood up when our progressive values were under attack. And I can promise you that I will never stand by the sidelines if the Republicans come after our schools and universities. I'll never stand by when they attack our environment. And I will do everything I can to push back against Scott Walker and his right-wing agenda. And you don't just have to take my word for it. As I've mentioned before, I've been endorsed by progressive candidates, both currently holding office and past candidates and past office holders themselves. And you can trust me that I will always have your best intentions at heart, and that I will always fight for the things that really matter to you. Now, basically, I'm just asking for your trust and for your vote, and I hope I've earned it. And thank you again all for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you all after the event. Thank you.
So thank you everyone for being here tonight. Gracias, muchas gracias, and thank you for Acting McFarland for organizing the event. And I will tell you that, my motto is to be an agent of change and transform the community where we live. I believe in that. I have done that. I have the experience to do that. I have been working in this community for more than 10 years. I have been, I think my skills, my background have prepared me for this role. I am fortunate to have a group of people that support me. I have been endorsed by a lot of people in this race. And I think that I can be that person that can reach to we need to elect people that they are bold. They have the audacity to reach, our opponent and sit and talk, okay? And I consider myself that I can do that job. I can do that. We don't need to elect people that they are extremists because they go there and they don't talk. We need to elect people that they have the audacity to go there and do a job and put people of Wisconsin first and then our party second. This is what I believe. And this is what I will appreciate your vote for me. And also, I want to motivate the young people, people of color, and minority people, especially Latino kids, to run for office. If I can do it, speaking English as a second language, they can do it. And this is my other motivation running for this race. We need to have more people representing us. Thank you very much.
That's it. Some of them might want to stick around and mingle, but thank you all again for coming.